The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at Titan's Gate, a strategic jump point that controlled access to the core Federation worlds. What they found there made even the most experienced captains take a sharp breath. 24 massive Void Hunter ships hung in space like dark tumors against the stars. Each alien vessel was larger than Earth's. Biggest space stations and their surfaces rippled with absorbed energy from previous battles. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and studied the enemy through her ship's sensors. The Void Hunter vessels looked like they were made of living metal that flowed and changed shape as she watched. Dark tentacles extended from their hulls toward nearby asteroids, consuming the rock and converting it into energy that fed their systems. "Ma'am," reported her sensor officer, Lieutenant Paul Martinez, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from all enemy vessels. They're drawing power from local space itself, pulling energy from cosmic radiation and stellar wind." Lisa nodded grimly. The Void Hunters were like cosmic vampires that fed on everything around them. No wonder the Federation's energy weapons had been useless. Shooting plasma at these things was like trying to kill a fire by throwing gasoline on it. Behind the human fleet, a group of damaged Federation ships limped into the system. Admiral Thexmore's flagship was barely holding together after his devastating defeat at Sigma Draconis. The proud Alterian commander had lost most of his fleet and had been forced to retreat like a coward for the first time in his military career. "Human vessels," came Thexmore's transmission, his voice filled with desperation. "This is Admiral Thexmore of the Alterian Empire. You must retreat immediately. These enemies are beyond anything we have ever faced. They consumed 200 of our finest ships without taking any damage." Lisa opened a communication channel to the alien admiral. "This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. We appreciate your warning, but we have orders to engage the enemy." There was a long pause before Thexmore responded. 37 ships? You have 37 ships against 24 Void Hunter vessels? We attacked with 200 ships and were completely destroyed. What can your small fleet possibly accomplish?" Lisa allowed herself a small smile as she looked at the weapons displays on her bridge. Her railguns were charged and ready to fire tungsten rods at speeds that would make physics professors weep with joy. "Admiral, you're about to see why Earth builds the best weapons in the galaxy." Captain Steve Chen aboard the UES Vengeance was studying the tactical situation with his weapons officer. The Void Hunter ships were arranged in a loose formation that suggested they were not expecting serious resistance. After destroying hundreds of Federation vessels without taking damage, they had probably become overconfident. "Sir," reported his targeting specialist, "enemy vessels are maintaining standard spacing. No evasive maneuvers detected. They don't seem to consider us a threat." Steve grinned at that news. "Good. Let's keep it that way until we're ready to surprise them." Captain Michelle Davis on the UES Retribution was making final preparations for battle. Her ship carried the heaviest railguns in the human fleet, massive electromagnetic cannons that could accelerate 20-kilogram tungsten rods to incredible speeds. She had been waiting her entire career for a chance to use these weapons against a worthy target. "All railgun turrets report ready for action," announced her weapons chief. "Capacitors at maximum charge. Targeting computers have locked onto the lead enemy vessel." Dr. Johnson was monitoring the battle from Earth, but his improvements to the railgun systems were about to be tested in real combat. He had spent years perfecting the electromagnetic coils and targeting computers that made human kinetic weapons so deadly. Unlike energy weapons that could be absorbed or deflected, railgun projectiles followed the basic laws of physics that could not be reprogrammed or ignored. Lisa activated the fleet communication system and addressed all 37 human ships. "All vessels, this is Defiance Actual. We are about to engage an enemy that has never faced kinetic weapons. They absorb energy, but they cannot absorb momentum. Today we show the galaxy why throwing rocks at your enemies never goes out of style." The lead Void Hunter vessel had noticed the human fleet and was extending metal tentacles toward them. The dark appendages moved through space like the arms of some cosmic octopus, reaching out to consume more matter. But the aliens had no experience fighting enemies that use solid projectiles instead of energy beams. "All ships target the lead vessel," Lisa ordered. "Railguns to maximum power. Fire on my mark." The UES Defiance's primary railgun charged with a distinctive whine that vibrated through the ship's hull. Similar sounds echoed across the human fleet as 37 ships prepared to deliver a physics lesson that the galaxy would never forget. "Mark," Lisa said calmly. 37 railguns fired at the same moment. launching tungsten rods at 20% of light speed toward the lead Void Hunter ship. The projectiles crossed the distance between fleets in less than a second, moving too fast for the alien vessel to react or adapt. The impact was spectacular. Tungsten rods weighing 10 kilograms each struck the Void Hunter ship with the kinetic energy of tactical nuclear weapons. Where Federation plasma beams had been harmlessly absorbed, the solid projectiles punched through the alien hull like it was made of paper. Dark ichor sprayed from massive holes as the enemy ship's programmable matter failed to adapt to simple kinetic force. Direct hits across the target, reported Paul Martinez, his voice filled with excitement. Enemy vessel is showing massive structural damage. The lead Void Hunter ship shuddered and began to collapse in on itself. Its flowing metal hull could not maintain integrity with dozens of tungsten rods buried deep in its core systems. The massive vessel broke apart in a chain reaction of secondary explosions as its absorbed energy was released in an uncontrolled burst. Target destroyed, announced Captain Chen from the Vengeance, moving to engage secondary target. The surviving Void Hunter ship seemed stunned by the destruction of their leader. For the first time since entering this galaxy, they had encountered weapons that could actually hurt them. Their tentacles withdrew as they tried to understand how solid projectiles had accomplished what energy weapons could not. But the human fleet was already firing again. Captain Davis's heavy railguns on the Retribution scored the second kill, reducing a Void Hunter cruiser to expanding debris with a volley of 20-kilogram tungsten rods. The alien ship simply came apart under the kinetic assault, its programmable matter unable to cope with basic physics. "That's for every Federation ship you destroyed," Michelle said as she watched the enemy vessel break up. The Void Hunters finally began evasive maneuvers, but human targeting systems had been designed for interplanetary warfare across vast distances. The computers could track fast-moving asteroids and space pirates, so following alien ships was not difficult. Every human ship had multiple railgun turrets that could fire independently, creating a constant stream of kinetic projectiles. Admiral Thexmore watched the battle from his damaged flagship and felt his four eyes widen in disbelief. The humans were systematically destroying Void Hunter vessels with weapons that the Federation had dismissed as primitive toys. Simple kinetic projectiles were accomplishing what the galaxy's most advanced technology had failed to achieve. The battle was turning into a rout as human railguns continued their devastating barrage against enemies that had no defense against solid matter traveling at relativistic speeds. The emergency meeting in the White House Situation Room lasted 18 hours. President Carol Martinez sat at the head of a long table surrounded by the most important people in Earth's government and military. On the walls, screens showed maps of the galaxy with red zones marking where the Void Hunters had consumed entire star systems. "The red areas were growing larger every hour. They humiliated us," said Senator Bob Turner, his face red with anger. 3 months ago, those aliens treated us like children with toys. They laughed at our weapons and kicked us out of their council. Now they want us to risk human lives to save them. Why should we help people who think we're primitives?" General Kate Hayes stood up and looked around the room at the arguing politicians. She had fought in 3 wars and seen what happened when good people did nothing, while evil spread across the galaxy. "Because it's the right thing to do," she said in a voice that cut through the shouting. "And because if the Federation falls, Earth is next on the menu." Dr. Alex Johnson had spent the last 3 days studying every piece of data about the Void Hunters that he could find. His computer screens were covered with technical readings and battle reports from destroyed Federation fleets. What he had learned made him both excited and terrified. "The alien ships seem to be made of programmable matter," he explained to the room. "They can change their shape and density at will. Energy weapons like plasma cannons and quantum disruptors pass right through them or get absorbed into their hull systems. The Void Hunters convert that energy into power for their own systems." President Martinez leaned forward in her chair. "What about our weapons? Would railguns work against them?" Dr. Johnson pulled up a hologram showing the basic physics of kinetic weapons. A railgun fires a solid tungsten rod using electromagnetic acceleration. The projectile reaches speeds of up to 60,000 kilometers per second. When solid matter traveling at those speeds hits another solid object, the laws of physics take over. He changed the hologram to show what happened when a railgun projectile struck a target. Energy can be redirected or absorbed, but kinetic force is different. You cannot reprogram the basic laws of motion. If a 10-kilogram tungsten rod hits you while moving at 20% of light speed, you are going to have a very bad day regardless of what your hull is made of. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now she spoke up. The Federation fleets relied entirely on energy weapons. They never developed kinetic systems because they thought throwing rocks was primitive, but sometimes primitive solutions work better than complex ones. The debate continued for hours as politicians argued about the risks of sending Earth's small fleet against enemies that had destroyed hundreds of Federation ships. Some wanted to hide and hope the Void Hunters would not find Earth. Others wanted to negotiate with the aliens even though they had never responded to any communication attempts. General Hayes finally ended the argument by putting a simple choice in front of everyone. We can run and hide and hope for the best, or we can fight with the weapons we have and show the galaxy what humans are capable of. I know which choice I can live with. President Martinez made the decision that would change human history. We fight. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment. The Earth Defense Force had 37 ships that were designed for interplanetary warfare. Each vessel was armed with advanced railgun systems that Dr. Johnson had been improving for 15 years. The ships were smaller than Federation battleships, but they were fast and their weapons hit harder than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Steve Chen received his orders while his ship, the UES Vengeance, was docked at Luna Station. He had been born on Mars and had spent his entire career fighting pirates and smugglers in the outer system. His ship was designed to catch fast enemies and hit them with overwhelming kinetic force. All crew report to battle stations, he announced over the ship's communication system. We are going to show the galaxy why Earth builds the best weapons in known space. Captain Michelle Davis commanded the UES Retribution, a heavy cruiser that carried 4 massive railgun turrets. She had been waiting her entire career for a chance to prove that human weapons were superior to alien technology. Her ship could accelerate tungsten rods to speeds that would punch through small moons. Load all magazines with anti-ship rounds, she ordered her weapons officer. Maximum charge on all railgun capacitors. When we meet these Void Hunters, I want to hit them so hard their great-grandchildren will feel it. Lisa Rodriguez was given command of the entire human fleet from her flagship, the UES Defiance. The ship had been her home for 5 years and she knew every bolt and wire in its hull. Her crew had trained together until they could operate their weapons systems with their eyes closed. All ships form up in attack formation, she broadcast to the fleet. Remember what we learned about these enemies. They absorb energy, but they cannot absorb momentum. We are going to teach them about Newton's laws of motion. Dr. Johnson made final adjustments to the railgun targeting systems while the fleet prepared to leave Earth's solar system. He had spent years perfecting the electromagnetic coils that accelerated projectiles to incredible speeds. His weapons were simple in concept, but devastating in practice. These are not just weapons, he told the assembled ship captains over video link. They are physics lessons delivered at 20% of light speed. The Void Hunters think they understand technology, but they are about to learn that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. The human fleet moved out of Earth orbit and jumped to hyperspace, heading for the last known position of the Void Hunter force. Behind them, they left a planet that was holding its breath and hoping that 37 ships could do what hundreds of Federation vessels had failed to accomplish. As the ships traveled through the strange non-space of hyperspace, crews across the fleet prepared for battle. Weapons were charged and targeted. Hull plating was reinforced and damage control teams stood ready. Everyone knew they were about to face an enemy that had consumed entire worlds. But the humans had something the Federation had lacked. They had weapons that worked on principles older than civilization itself. When you threw a rock at someone, it hurt regardless of how advanced their technology was. The Void Hunters were about to learn that lesson in the most painful way possible. The galaxy had mocked humanity's railguns and called them primitive toys. Soon those same aliens would be begging for the protection of the weapons they had dismissed as useless relics from a more primitive time. 3 months had passed since the humans were sent away from the Galactic Council. Jake Morrison was back on Earth writing reports that no one wanted to read. Lisa Rodriguez was training new pilots on ships that the galaxy thought were useless. Dr. Johnson was in his laboratory making improvements to weapons that aliens had called primitive toys. Then the sensors across the galaxy detected something impossible. Commander Ryan Baker was working the night shift at the Deep Space Monitoring station on Titan when the alarm started screaming. The massive screens around him lit up with red warnings as automated systems tried to understand what they were seeing. Ryan had been watching space for 15 years and had never seen readings like these. "Computer," he said into his headset. "Confirm sensor data for the Outer Rim territories." The computer's voice was calm even as it delivered terrifying news. "Confirmed. Multiple large objects detected emerging from intergalactic space. Objects are moving at significant sublight speeds toward inhabited systems. Size estimates range from 5 to 20 kilometers in length." Ryan felt his blood turn cold. Nothing in the galaxy was supposed to be that big except for space stations, and space stations did not move between star systems. He activated emergency communication channels and sent warnings to every military base in human space. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Colony Administrator Patricia Wells was having coffee when the communication system activated itself. She had been running the mining operation for 2 years and nothing ever happened on her quiet world. The miners dug up rare metals and the transport ships carried them away. Life was peaceful and boring. Then she saw the ships. They came out of the darkness between stars like massive shadows that blocked out the light. Patricia had seen Federation battleships before, and these things made them look like children's toys. The alien vessels were black as space itself and seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. They moved with purpose toward her world. "This is Kepler 442b calling any Federation vessel," Patricia said into her emergency transmitter. "We have unknown ships approaching our system. They are not responding to our signals. Please send help immediately." The lead ship was now close enough that Patricia could see details on its hull. The surface seemed to move and flow like liquid metal. There were no visible weapons, but the entire vessel felt wrong in ways that made her hands shake. She tried to contact the mining crews scattered across the planet's surface. "All teams return to the colony ship immediately," she ordered. "We are evacuating the planet right now, but it was too late." The alien ship extended something that looked like a metal tentacle toward the surface of Kepler 442b. Where it touched the ground, everything simply disappeared. Not destroyed or blown up, but gone as if it had never existed. The very atoms seemed to be pulled apart and absorbed into the dark vessel. Patricia managed to send one final message before the alien tentacle reached the colony ship. "They're not attacking us," she said in a voice filled with horror. "They're eating everything. The mountains, the oceans, the atmosphere itself. They're consuming our entire world." The transmission ended. Admiral Thexmore of the Alterian Empire received the distress call, while his fleet was patrolling near the galactic core. The four-eyed alien had fought in dozens of battles and conquered many worlds for the Federation. He had plasma cannons that could melt through any known armor and quantum disruptors that could phase matter out of existence. No enemy had ever stood against his advanced weapons. "Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment," Thexmore ordered his crew. "We will show these invaders what Federation military power looks like." His fleet consisted of 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Each vessel was armed with weapons that could crack moons and shields that could stop any known attack. The Alterian ships moved through hyperspace toward the Outer Rim, territories where more colonies were going silent every hour. When Thexmore's fleet arrived at the Sigma Draconis system, they found 12 of the alien vessels consuming everything in their path. The dark ships were pulling apart asteroids and space stations with metal tentacles that seemed to grow from their hulls. Where the tentacles touched matter, it simply vanished as if it was being converted into pure energy. "All ships attack pattern Delta," Thexmore commanded. "Target their largest vessel with concentrated plasma fire." 200 Federation ships opened fire at the same time. Plasma beams hot enough to melt steel struck the lead alien vessel from every direction. Quantum disruptors hit its hull with energy that should have torn apart its molecular structure. Particle cannons bombarded it with streams of accelerated matter moving at light speed. The alien ship absorbed every attack. The plasma beams were pulled into the dark hull like water into a sponge. The quantum disruptors had no effect, as if the ship was made of something that existed outside normal space. The particle beams simply disappeared into the flowing metal surface without leaving any damage. Then the alien ship struck back. They extended hundreds of metal tentacles toward the Federation fleet. The tentacles moved faster than any ship could dodge and wrapped around Alterian vessels like fingers grabbing toys. Where they touched the advanced hull plating, it began to dissolve. The proud Federation warships started falling apart as their very atoms were pulled into the alien vessels. Thexmore watched in horror as his flagship's bridge began to melt around him. His advanced shields offered no protection against an enemy that consumed matter itself. His powerful weapons could not hurt beings that absorbed energy like plants absorbed sunlight. The metal floor under his feet started to flow like water toward holes that had appeared in the hull. "All ships retreat," he ordered, but most of his fleet was already gone. The dark aliens had consumed 200 of the galaxy's finest warships in less than 6 hours. Thexmore's escape pod was one of the few things that made it away from the battle. Back on Earth, General Kate Hayes was reading reports that made no sense. The Federation's most powerful fleet had been completely destroyed by 12 alien ships. Weapons that could destroy planets had been useless against enemies that seemed to eat energy itself. The greatest military minds in the galaxy were panicking as colony after colony went silent. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Danny Clark as he handed her a new message, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council." Kate read the message and felt a cold smile cross her face. The same beings who had mocked humanity's weapons 3 months ago were now begging for help. The aliens who had called Railguns primitive toys were asking Earth to save them from an enemy their advanced technology could not touch. "Send a reply," Kate told Danny. "Tell them we'll consider their request." The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes old-fashioned solutions worked better than fancy technology. Sometimes throwing rocks at your enemies was exactly the right answer. The aliens had laughed at human railguns because they shot solid matter instead of energy beams. They were about to discover why that mattered. Jake Morrison walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber and felt his heart beat faster. The room was huge and filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some looked like giant insects with many eyes. Others were made of what seemed like living crystal that sang when they moved. A few looked almost human but had blue skin and extra arms. Jake had trained for this moment for 3 years, but nothing could prepare him for seeing so many alien species in one place. Behind him walked Captain Lisa Rodriguez, who commanded Earth's finest warship. She wore her blue uniform with pride and carried herself like the warrior she was. Next to her was Dr. Alex Johnson, who had spent most of his life building weapons that could protect Earth from threats. The 3 humans looked small compared to the massive aliens around them, but they stood tall and ready. The leader of the council was a creature that looked like a praying mantis the size of a tree. Its name was Nexustar, and it spoke in clicks and buzzes that were translated by machines into words Jake could understand. The mantis being looked down at the humans and made a sound that might have been laughter. "So these are the humans we have heard about," Nexustar said. "You wish to join our federation and be part of our great alliance. Tell us what you bring to make us stronger." Jake stepped forward and activated a hologram that showed Earth's military ships. The images displayed sleek vessels with long metal tubes mounted on their hulls. "These are our warships," he said with confidence. "They are armed with railguns that can fire projectiles at incredible speeds." The chamber filled with sounds that the translation devices turned into laughter. A being that looked like a walking tree with too many branches made a noise like wind through leaves. "Projectiles?" it asked. "You mean you throw things at your enemies?" An alien with 4 eyes and purple skin that gleamed like metal spoke up. This was Ambassador Zethkri from the Alterian Empire. "We have heard of kinetic weapons," he said while his 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Our ancestors used such primitive tools thousands of years ago. Now we have plasma weapons that can melt through any armor. We have quantum cannons that can make matter simply disappear. And you bring us devices that shoot metal bars?" Lisa felt anger rise in her chest but kept her face calm. She had seen what human railguns could do. She had watched tungsten rods punch through asteroid rock like it was made of paper. She had seen enemy ships torn apart by projectiles moving at speeds that most beings could not imagine. But she said nothing and let Jake continue. Dr. Johnson wanted to explain how their weapons worked. He wanted to tell these aliens about electromagnetic fields and velocity calculations and kinetic energy transfer. He wanted to show them videos of railgun tests where metal slugs had created craters the size of buildings. But the aliens were not listening. They were too busy laughing. A crystalline being that sang instead of spoke made musical notes that translated as mockery. "Our energy shields can stop any physical object," it chimed. "Our plasma fields can vaporize metal before it reaches our hulls. Why would we need weapons that simply push matter at other matter?" Another alien that looked like a jellyfish floating in a bubble of water added its own comments. "Perhaps these humans could join our maintenance crews," it gurgled. "They seem good at fixing things with hammers." The laughter grew louder and Jake felt his face turn red. These beings acted like Earth's greatest achievements were children's toys. They talked about human technology like it was something they had outgrown long ago. Some aliens made gestures that needed no translation. They were pointing and making fun of the human weapons. Nexustar raised one of its massive arms and the chamber became quiet. "Humans," it said in a voice that sounded bored. "Your species is young and has much to learn. Perhaps in a few thousand years when you develop real weapons you can apply again. For now we must deny your request to join our Federation." Jake tried to speak, but Nexustar continued. "We have ships that can destroy stars. We have weapons that can crack planets in half. We have technology that bends space and time itself. What use would we have for beings who still believe in throwing rocks at their enemies?" The three humans were escorted out of the chamber by floating robots that glowed with inner light. As they walked through the corridors, Jake heard more laughter behind them. Dr. Johnson's hands were shaking with anger. Lisa's jaw was set in a hard line that meant trouble for anyone who crossed her. When they reached their small transport ship, Jake finally spoke. "They think we're primitives," he said. "They think our weapons are toys." Lisa started the ship's engines and set course for Earth. "Let them think that," she said. "They have no idea what they just did." Dr. Johnson looked out at the massive space station that housed the Galactic Council. Ships from 100 different worlds moved around it like metal fish in an ocean of stars. "They'll learn," he said quietly. "Sooner or later they'll learn that sometimes the old ways are the best ways." The trip back to Earth took 6 days. During that time, the three humans barely spoke. They were all thinking about the same thing. The galaxy had rejected them. The most advanced civilizations in known space had laughed at Earth's greatest weapons. They had been treated like children trying to play with adult toys. But Jake remembered something his grandfather had told him about war. Sometimes the side that looks weaker wins because the stronger side gets too confident. Sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted. Sometimes the people who laugh the loudest end up crying the hardest. As Earth grew larger in their ship's window, Jake made a promise to himself. Humanity would prove its worth. Their railguns would show the galaxy what real power looked like. The aliens had made a mistake by dismissing Earth's weapons. They would regret that mistake very soon. The battle lasted 4 hours and ended with complete human victory. Every Void Hunter vessel had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris by the relentless barrage of railgun fire. The alien ships that had consumed entire worlds and destroyed hundreds of Federation vessels were now nothing more than scrap metal, drifting through space. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the last enemy ship break apart under sustained kinetic bombardment. Tungsten rods fired at 20% of light speed had punched through the alien hull like bullets through tissue paper. The Void Hunter's programmable matter technology was useless against the basic laws of physics that governed solid objects in motion. "All enemy vessels destroyed," reported Lieutenant Paul Martinez, his voice filled with amazement. "No human ships lost. Minor damage to 3 vessels from debris impacts, but all crews are safe." Lisa felt a wave of pride wash over her. 37 human ships had accomplished what the entire Federation military could not achieve. The weapons that aliens had mocked as primitive toys had proven devastatingly effective against enemies that absorbed energy, like cosmic vampires. Captain Steve Chen aboard the UES Vengeance was conducting damage assessment when his communication officer picked up a transmission from the surviving Federation ships. Admiral Thexmore was requesting permission to approach the human flagship, an unprecedented gesture from a proud Alterian commander who had never shown respect to any other species. "Admiral Rodriguez," came Thexmore's voice over the communication system, "I formally request permission to come aboard your vessel. I owe you and your people an apology that can only be delivered in person." Lisa was surprised by the alien admiral's humble tone. 3 months ago, Thexmore had been laughing at human weapons along with the rest of the Galactic Council. Now he was asking to visit a human ship like a defeated enemy seeking mercy from his conquerors. "Permission granted, Admiral," Lisa replied. "Dock at our main shuttle bay." The Alterian Admiral's shuttle was a sleek vessel that looked like it was built for speed and elegance rather than war. When Thexmore stepped out of his ship, Lisa could see that his proud bearing had been replaced by something that looked almost like shame. The four-eyed alien walked slowly, as if carrying a great weight on his shoulders. The human and alien admirals met in the Defiance's main conference room. Dexmore looked around at the simple, functional design of the human ship and seemed to approve of what he saw. Everything was built for efficiency rather than show. Weapons over decoration. "I owe you an apology," Dexmore said without preamble. "We mistook simplicity for primitiveness. Your weapons are not crude relics from a barbaric past. They are elegant solutions to fundamental problems. While we pursued increasingly complex technology, you perfected the art of applied physics." Dr. Johnson joined the meeting via video link from Earth, his face showing a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. He had spent 15 years perfecting railgun technology, while being told by experts that kinetic weapons were obsolete. Now his simple electromagnetic cannons had saved the galaxy from an enemy that advanced energy weapons could not touch. "The principle is basic," Dr. Johnson explained to the alien admiral. "Energy can be redirected, absorbed, or dissipated by sufficiently advanced technology. But matter in motion follows immutable laws. When a solid object traveling at relativistic speeds meets another solid object, physics always wins." Dexmore nodded his understanding. "Your railguns do not fire energy that can be absorbed. They fire matter that must be dealt with according to the fundamental forces of the universe. The Void Hunters could consume our plasma and quantum energy, but they could not reprogram. The laws of motion," reports, "of the human victory spread across the galaxy, faster than light through the Federation's quantum communication network. Species that had mocked Earth's primitive weapons were now calling human admirals to offer congratulations and request military assistance. The beings who had laughed at railguns were suddenly very interested in learning how kinetic weapons worked. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to formally address humanity's status in the Federation. The same chamber where Jake Morrison had been humiliated 3 months earlier was now filled with aliens eager to welcome Earth as a full member of the galactic community. Council Prime. Nexus Star looked very different than he had during the first meeting. The massive insectoid creature's arrogant confidence had been replaced by genuine respect and perhaps a touch of fear. He had seen what human weapons could accomplish and understood that Earth was not a species to be dismissed lightly. The Galactic Council hereby extends full membership in the Federation to the human species, Nexus Star announced. Furthermore, Earth is granted a permanent seat on the Security Council in recognition of their decisive victory over the Void Hunter threat. The vote was unanimous. Every species that had laughed at human railguns now voted to welcome Earth into the highest levels of galactic government. The weapons they had called primitive toys had proven more effective than all their advanced technology combined. Captain Michelle Davis received word of the council vote while conducting post-battle maintenance on her ship's railgun systems. The massive electromagnetic cannons that had torn apart Void Hunter vessels were already being examined by Federation scientists who wanted to understand how kinetic weapons worked, ma'am, reported her weapons officer. "We're receiving requests from 12 different species asking for technical specifications on our railgun designs. Apparently, everyone wants to add kinetic weapons to their ships." Michelle smiled at the irony. "Tell them they can submit formal requests through diplomatic channels, and remind them that these primitive toys just saved their advanced civilizations." Admiral Lisa Rodriguez was promoted to head the new Joint Defense Command, a position created specifically to coordinate human and Federation military forces. Her first task was planning defenses against additional Void Hunter incursions that long-range sensors were detecting deeper in intergalactic space. The galaxy learned an important lesson. Today, Lisa said during her acceptance speech, technology is not about having the most complex systems or the most exotic energy sources. It is about understanding fundamental principles and applying them effectively. The human fleet prepared to return to Earth as heroes, but their victory had attracted unwanted attention. Deep space monitoring stations were detecting new signals from the void between galaxies. More Void Hunter fleets were moving toward the galaxy, larger and more organized than the first wave. The aliens who had once mocked humanity's railguns were now begging for protection from the simple kinetic weapons that had proven so devastatingly effective. Federation shipyards were being retooled to produce railgun-equipped vessels based on human designs. The galaxy was finally learning that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best solutions. As the UES Defiance jumped to hyperspace heading for Earth, Lisa looked back at the debris field that marked humanity's first major victory in galactic politics. The Void Hunters had been defeated by weapons that worked on principles as old as the first rock thrown by an angry caveman. Physics had triumphed over exotic technology, and simple solutions had proven superior to complex ones. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of underestimating humanity's primitive weapons. The species that threw rocks at their enemies had just saved everyone from cosmic monsters that fed on energy itself. Human railguns had earned their place among the most feared weapons in known space. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, more enemies were coming who would soon learn the same painful lesson about the devastating effectiveness of matter in motion.